This is David Besgrove, Director of Human Resources for Pattonville School District. We would like a few minutes of your time today to discuss our non-discrimination, equal opportunity employment, harassment, sexual harassment, and electronic communication policies. There are two reasons we need to do this. Pattonville has an obligation to abide by federal law, and federal law prohibits discrimination, harassment, and sexual harassment. Secondly, and more importantly, district policy prohibits discrimination, harassment, and sexual harassment. We would like to create a learning environment that is free of this sort of behavior. As a result, the Board of Education has adopted policies to provide this proper learning environment. It should be free of harassment, sexual harassment, and discrimination. We ask for your help in following federal law and district policy to create an environment that is free of this sort of behavior. Our goal is to create a positive environment for staff and students. That environment should be conducive for student learning, conducive for adult learning, and support district policy prohibiting harassment. Your actions can be seen and felt by others. We ask you to help create a positive environment for all and to set a tone that encourages student and adult learning. If we follow federal law and policies, we can create that sort of positive environment and, more importantly, treat each other as we should here at Pattonville School District. We'd like to take a minute or two here to talk about intent versus impact. Even though you don't intend a comment, gesture, photo, whatever it may be to have impact on another individual, it may very well have impact on that individual. For example, you may be having a conversation with a colleague where you're using some language that would be considered offensive or inappropriate by most. That particular colleague that you're talking to may be comfortable with that, but a third colleague could hear that conversation. Perhaps they're in the room, around the corner, in another cubicle where they're hearing some conversation that makes them feel uncomfortable. It's created, therefore, a harassing or an intimidating environment for them. Even though the intent was not for that person to hear that conversation or be part of that conversation, it does not mean that indeed there hasn't been some impact because you've created an environment that's uncomfortable for them. On many occasions, we're conducting investigations regarding these matters. Individuals tell us that they didn't intend for such and so or someone to be offended by the comments. That may indeed be the case. You may feel what you're saying is appropriate. You may be sharing it with a third party and didn't even think the individual that was complaining was impacted or heard what you had to say. But that is no defense for your behavior. Again, intent versus impact. Please keep in mind that things that you do here, even though you don't intend them to have impact on someone else, they may very well indeed have impact on someone else. So be very careful in what you say and do, as it may be construed by someone else to be creating a hostile or intimidating work environment for them. Let's take a couple of minutes to look at the definition of sexual harassment. In a broad sense, sexual harassment is defined as any unwelcome sexual advance, request for a sexual favor, or any other verbal or physical conduct of a sexual nature. Specifically in the United States, the courts and the law recognizes two types of sexual harassment. One is quid pro quo, the other is hostile environment. The first, quid pro quo, means this for that in Latin. An example of this type of sexual harassment might be if a supervisor were to ask a subordinate to attend a conference at the lake with them on a weekend in exchange for getting you a job advancement in the future. Or if a supervisor were to ask someone to go on a date in exchange for making sure they received a raise the following year. Those types of this for that behavior are strictly prohibited by law. The second type of sexual harassment is the hostile work environment harassment. Typically, this is what employers will see more frequently than the quid pro quo types of harassment. Anything that someone is doing that interferes with someone else's work performance or creates an intimidating, hostile, or offensive work environment, if it's of a sexual nature, may be sexual harassment. Examples of this sort of behavior could be sharing an off-color joke with colleagues. It could be using offensive language in the presence of other individuals. It might be having the inappropriate wrong types of pictures hanging in your cubicles or in your classroom. It might be something that you have on your computer. More importantly, as we talked about in an earlier slide, it may not even be anything that you intend to have someone else be offended by. For example, as we said earlier, sharing a joke with someone else over the phone. having something sitting on your desk that you felt was private, but someone that comes in and out of your office or your room every day happens to see because it's on your desk. You don't intend for it, but again, they are seeing it, and it's creating an environment that they feel is hostile or intimidating. These sorts of behaviors are things that will not be tolerated by Pattonville School District. So please, as you conduct your day-to-day business in the district, make sure you're doing everything you can to create an environment that is free from anything that might be considered intimidating, hostile, or offensive. The Pattonville School District Board of Education has adopted Policy AC, which addresses prohibited discrimination and harassment. The Pattonville School District Board of Education does not engage in or permit discrimination or harassment on the basis of protected categories in admission or access to or treatment or employment in its programs and activities. The protected categories include race, color, national origin, sex, age, disability, genetic information, and religion. This applies to applicants, students, parents, employees, visitors, sources of referral, and professional organizations. Harassment can take the form of graffiti, jokes, slurs, name-calling, hostile acts, written or graphic material containing comments or stereotypes that degrade members of a protected class, physical acts of aggression, and unwelcome sexual touching, advances, or communications. Please see the policy for a full listing of the prohibited acts. Please remember that additional behaviors are also prohibited. Specifically, behavior that is not unlawful or does not rise to the level of harassment may still be unacceptable for the workplace or the educational environment. Demeaning or otherwise harmful actions are prohibited, particularly if directed at personal characteristics, including but not limited to socioeconomic level, sexual orientation, or perceived sexual orientation. Any person who believes that he or she has been a victim of discrimination or harassment, or who has observed others who may be the victim of discrimination or harassment based on one or more of the protected categories by a student, employee, or other school personnel of the district, or by any other person who is participating in, observing, or otherwise engaged in district-sponsored activities, is expected to immediately report that alleged act to any district administrator or to the compliance coordinator. It is important that you do so. Pattonville School District will follow the steps laid out in a policy to investigate any claim brought to its attention. Any investigation is taken completely seriously and will be addressed as quickly as possible. Pattonville School District is an equal opportunity employer. As spelled out in our policy GBA, our policy assures that equal employment opportunities are given to all qualified individuals regardless of their race, color, ethnicity, national origin, ancestry, religion, creed, sex, age, disability, veteran status, military obligations, genetic information, sexual orientation, socioeconomic status, or to the extent required by all applicable laws. Our policy of equal employment applies to our recruitment process, selection process, placement, promotion, transfer, compensation, benefits, and termination. The goal of our equal employment opportunity policy is to provide training and education and opportunities and to help employees grow in their jobs and to prepare them for advancement, ensuring that each employee is given equal opportunity to participate. We also want to make sure we assist employees in securing positions commensurate with their skills and knowledge, assuring equal access to promotion and advancement, as well as efficiently resolving concerns and grievances for all employees and prospective employees which may arise in connection with the Equal Opportunity Employment Program. Pattonville Policy AC also addresses non-discrimination. Policy AC assures fair and equal treatment of applicants and employees, as well as students and visitors. The Board of Education expects fair and equal treatment for all individuals. The Board of Education policy is designed to afford equal treatment regardless of race, color, national origin, sex, age, disability, genetic information, or religion. The superintendent will ensure adherence to this policy in all daily Pattonville School District practices. We also have an electronic communication policy. Policy EHD-R-1. The purpose of the policy is to ensure proper and appropriate use of all electronic equipment that you will utilize. Make particular note of the requirements in the policy regarding professional and appropriate communication between staff and students. Only use district-provided equipment and communication methods to communicate with students in an appropriate manner. Finally, it is appropriate for all staff members with district permission to establish websites or other accounts on behalf of the district to communicate with other staff members or students and parents and guardians. Policy EHD-R-1 is Pattonville's electronic communication policy. We encourage each staff member to read and/or review the policy on an annual basis so that you thoroughly understand the expectations and obligations the district has when it comes to your use of electronic communication devices or resources that you're given to use. 3 prohibited behaviors we'd like to take a minute or two here to point out. First of all, we ask that you not use electronic resources during work or instructional time for personal reasons to the extent that it interferes with your ability to do your job. Secondly, we ask that you use the internet, the network, and the computer you're given in appropriate ways only. Any inappropriate use of the internet, network, and computer is prohibited. Finally, we ask that you refrain from sending any emails that are inappropriate in nature. Any emails containing crude comments, inappropriate jokes, inappropriate pictures, anything along those lines is prohibited. We ask that you not share that sort of information. Again, review the plans, review the policies so that you know all of the expectations the district has, all the appropriate and inappropriate ways the equipment can be used. Additionally, there's a section of the policy that addresses the uses of other digital devices that you might come into contact here and using as a Pattonville employee. Finally, the policy does share information about legal expectations to privacy when it comes to using electronic communication devices at Pattonville. Please note that you have no legal expectation to privacy when using Pattonville-owned electronic communication devices. If you have any questions or at any time you're wondering about any of the things that are in the policy or anything that you've heard today as part of this presentation, please contact your instructional specialist in your building or contact our Information Technology Department. They would be happy to clarify any questions you have regarding appropriate or inappropriate use of the computer, things that you should or should not be doing when using that equipment. If you ever have a concern regarding our harassment, sexual harassment, non-discrimination, or electronic communication policies, please address them immediately. Contact your supervisor or administrator or the appropriate district compliance coordinator to report your concerns. Policy requires that you report any inappropriate behavior. Don't be afraid to report things. They need to be addressed. If you see something happening to others, encourage them to report or share their concerns. Or you may share your concern yourself regarding someone else with an official of the district. You may talk to a building rep or MNEA rep before taking your concern to the appropriate district official. Bottom line is, don't ignore any inappropriate behavior. That behavior must stop. We want it to stop immediately, and the district will investigate per the procedures in Policy AC. Anything brought to our attention will be investigated. Finally, feel free to let your supervisor know if you receive any unsolicited or inappropriate material via email or any material that makes you feel uncomfortable via email, even if it's from outside the district. The technology department can block email addresses. Don't forward unacceptable emails if you get one. Let an administrator or technology department member know about those concerns so they can be dealt with in the appropriate manner. What happens when you bring a concern to your administrator or the Human Resource Center? Well, the first thing that happens is we will spend some time with you as an individual, making sure we understand all the concerns, all the information that you can bring to us. We'll likely ask you what was said or what was done or what actions have been taken. We'd also ask that you give us the names of any witnesses, anyone that may have seen or heard what happened, because it's important we get everyone's perspective on this issue. We'll spend some time then talking to any witnesses that may be brought to our attention that heard, overheard, saw the offensive behavior. Finally, we will make sure that we sit down with the individual that's being accused of the behavior and get their perspective on the issue as well. Once we've taken those steps as a part of an investigation process, we will reach a resolution and will then work with all the parties involved to share that resolution. During the investigation process, it's important to us that we maintain everyone's dignity and respect as a person. We do not have anyone involved in the investigation process that does not need to be involved. We're as fair, thorough, and confidential as we can be. We also follow federal law where required in terms of these investigations. We don't get on PAs in buildings and announce that everyone needs to come downstairs so that we can talk about this issue. We don't bring in people from other buildings that know nothing of the issue. We focus on those that were involved, focus on those that have some firsthand knowledge, and come to some sort of resolution. Once that resolution has been met, as we indicated a few minutes ago, we will share that with all parties. What that resolution is may depend on the circumstances, may depend on what happened in that particular situation. Just as there is not a one-size-fits-all sort of behavior that may be offensive or discriminatory or hostile in nature, there's not a one-size-fits-all response either. It may be something as simple as a letter of reprimand. It may involve a few days off of work without pay. It may involve someone losing their job depending on the nature and severity of the issue at hand. But we will look at all factors. We will get as much information as we can before we come to that resolution. These are very important issues that require time to investigate. When we do investigate them, it becomes a high priority for our office and the Human Resource Center. We will almost drop everything that we're doing to focus on these things because it's important that they get addressed as quickly as possible. Having said that, some of these issues are complex and rather lengthy in detail in terms of gathering as much information as we can. As soon as a resolution is met, we will let you know. Again, we want to thank you for your time today and the few minutes that it's taken us to go through this material. As a school district, it's very important that we maintain an environment that everyone feels comfortable coming to work in. After all, we are working with children, and this environment of all places should be one that's free from any sort of harassment, discrimination, abuse of electronic equipment, whatever it may be. We're here to educate the children of the future and to assure that we're doing that in an environment that is safe for not only the children, but for the adults. If the adults can't come to work in a place where they feel comfortable, that eventually will reflect in everything that we do, and we want to make sure that we're in compliance with the law and our policies to make it a place that everyone feels comfortable coming to work. Thank you very much for your time, and have a great day.